Hi everyone, and welcome to our second Literature Cross Borders dialogue for 2026. We are so excited to be here together, sharing a love of children's books and helping books travel across borders, but not just the books, conversations about them. This happens so rarely in the children's and young adult literature space, and we think it's so important that given what books can do about empathy and understanding and enriching our lives and supporting the foundations that allow us to pursue human rights, those conversations can't stop at borders, otherwise they make absolutely no sense and they're going to get absolutely nowhere. So this project is all about making that happen. So today we'll be talking with some students from Indian universities and some students from Bath University in the UK, but we also have a program where schools are talking to each other across borders. So we're really excited that this conversation is getting bigger all the time, and we're gaining some traction and engaging in some lovely research. And we also have some panel recordings. So we had a lovely one of our last dialogue, which was about the partition of India. So you'll be able to find this on our website. And this is the three authors from the pairings. But today we are moving on to pairing 2, and Laura Elizabeth will introduce the books, and then all of our lovely participants will introduce themselves. So thank you so much for being here. From me, I'm Lexi Sali, and with Megha Gupta, we are the founders of Literature Across Borders, and we hope you enjoy our event today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, hi guys. I'm Laura Jacquemond. I'm a second-year student in the Master's Writing for Young People at Bath University. I live in France. I do the online version, and I'm really excited to be here, like, super excited. So I have the books. We're going to talk about these two books. Wait, let me get The Boy at the Back of the Class by Onjali Raúf and Dear Mrs. Naidu by Mathangi Subramanian. I got the pronunciation. So I'm sure you're all really excited to talk about this together. So I thought that we'd go around sort of the table, and introduce ourselves really shortly. And I wonder if Andy, would you start? Could you start?
Sure. I'm Andy Coombs. I'm originally from the UK, but I've lived in Sweden for the last 25 years. And there I work as somebody who helps with curriculum development, and I'm an author. So I've written upwards of 100 YA books and MA books now over the last 25 years. And I'm currently doing a PhD at Bath Spa in storytelling and education.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. That's wonderful. Wow. If we come to Nishta.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Nishta. I'm pursuing my master's in English literature at Ashoka University. Previously, I was also teaching at an alternative school in India. So I used to teach young children, junior school and middle school children, and we did. It's quite interesting because we did think about taking Dear Mrs. Naidu as a part of one of our books. Eventually, we picked another one over it, but I was really excited to read this. So this platform gave me an opportunity to read this book that I'd long been wanting to read. But I'm very happy to be a part of this conversation here.
Great. Wonderful. If we come to Shivani.
Hello, good evening, everyone. And we actually have evening back at India. So yeah, I'm Shivani. I'm currently pursuing my master's at University of Hyderabad. And while pursuing my master's, I have come across various books that analyzes how voice is constructed centrally. And I have like a very particular interest in this marginalized fiction literature. So reading this book has been very fulfilling experience for me. And yeah, I just completely loved the book themes, the narrative, how it is framed and everything about it.
Okay, thank you. And Vagmita?
Hi, I'm Vagmita. I'm a fourth year undergraduate student studying English and creative writing at Ashoka University. I'm doing a minor in media studies. Uh, I think I've been really interested in just children's literature for a while right now. I don't think I had the chance to read any of these books, and neither was I really did I come across these books before? So I was really, really happy to have the chance to read them now.
Okay, great. And Hannah, last but not least, it's just because you're last on my screen. I was going around
It's
that
okay,
way.
don't worry. Yeah, so I'm Hannah Durkin. I am a middle grade children's author from Leeds. I'm also completing my master's with Basbar University, and I work in a primary school for the rest of the week with middle grade age children. And I have actually read this book with some the boy at the back of the class with some children in my school.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you can bring the point of view of children for this book. Okay, so that's everyone, I think, because Maria didn't come. So I will proceed to the questions. So I have them written down here. You've received them. So let's see, I'm gonna read the question and then I'll choose who's gonna go first, if there's a volunteer. So number one, is this the first time you've read a book from India for the UK students, or a book from the UK if you're an Indian student? And what was your overall impression of the story that you read? And did anything surprise you in the book? Would anyone like to go first? First of all, perhaps someone would, and if not, I'll have to choose, I guess.
I'm happy to go first.
Andy, okay, thank you. Thanks.
I haven't read many YA or MA children's books from India. I read the YY Girl a while ago and a couple of others, but I loved this book. Overall impression. I thought it was subtle. It asked some very deep questions and some very hard questions, but because of the style of it, I don't want to tread on other questions that are coming up. But the way it worked with the delicacy, the humor, the irony, no, I thought it was wonderful. So
Okay.
I'm very happy to bring it to Sweden and spread it around because I love it.
Oh, good. Nice. Okay, great. Okay, Shivani, would you like to answer that question? Yeah. Oh, you raised your
So,
hand.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, this isn't my first encounter with the cross-cultural test, but reading this particular book within a specific academic context felt a bit different. I would say my overall perspective on this book was shaped by the narrative structure. The narrative structure is pretty interesting, how the author navigated the tension between the infiltration and the global influence. And what surprised me the most was the universality of the test because despite it being has like having a particular cultural setting, the themes of identity and displacement that is discussed within this book is pretty familiar for everyone belonging to any of the countries, any of the cultural settings, I would say. It also kind of served as a reminder that our life changes, the core human conflict, that the search for belonging and the search for negotiation,
Mhm,
heritage, everything. I just
mhm.
feel that everything remains across the culture, across the borders, no matter whichever country, whichever cultural setting we belong to. These things remain pretty common everywhere.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's interesting, the universality of it. Yes. All right. Nishta, what do you think about what was your impression of the books?
I mean, I grew up reading a lot of Enid Blyton and all of those authors, but when it comes to contemporary books, I hadn't read any, so this was my
Mhm.
first on the list. Um, I felt that in a lot of ways there was some parallels that I could draw between both of these texts and certain narrative elements that they used. Um, but something that really surprised me, or was that I could not guess the gender of the narrator till I think when they meet Mr. Greggs, and that's when I get to know what the gender is, and that was such an interesting narrative style for the author to have used, because gender plays such an important role in Dear Mrs. Naidu, whereas it does
Mhm.
to Wave. There were other also like quite some cultural elements that I was pleasantly surprised by, like the whole part about having a class assistant is something I've never seen. I mean, because I also taught in India, I've never seen that in India, at least happening in most schools around. where you have another class assistant helping a child navigate linguistic barriers. But to see those elements was actually quite a fascinating thing.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about the class assistant, but yes, that's a thing. That's a thing. Yeah, that's so nice. Hannah, would you like to weigh in on that first question?
Yeah, that's interesting because that's my day job. I'm a classroom assistant.
Okay.
So we do happen here. Yes, I had so I took part in lab last year. So I read the picture book by lovely Mecca, the A Home of Our Own, which I absolutely loved. My little girl really loved it as well. But this was the first middle grade book that I had read, and I do think it's a perfect comparison for the boy at the back of the class. Like, it was really, really interesting reading them both because there were so many themes that came up that were very, very similar. And because it was middle grade rather than a picture book, it gave me a bit more sort of context to what schooling and things like that were like in India, which is something that I didn't know anything about.
Right. Yeah, I get that, because me either. I didn't know how school worked in India. I was a bit surprised about the things that they were lacking at their public school. And Avagmita, what about you?
Yeah. So I have also, like Nisha, grown up reading quite a few authors from the UK, like Roald Dahl, C.S. Lewis. Quite a few not children's book authors also that I read as a child. So that was also I think enjoyable. Recently, in the more contemporary times, I guess I read Catherine Rundle's Impossible Creatures, but that was again more for like last year's lab dialogue. Um, and so, because my exposure to a lot of children's literature has been really to these sort of magical worlds, it was very different for me to read about a non-magical world. And a lot of things were surprising to me. In magical worlds, the child sort of just does their own thing. There's adult supervision, but the adults don't always turn out to be excellent role models. But here, the role of adults became very different, and I'm sure we'll speak about it a bit more later. And because of that, the tone also changes. Like, I think in a lot of more magical worlds, the child is a bit more authoritative. Like, I will do this. Here, it was very inquiring. I think both of our protagonists were very curious children, and I really like that about them. And like Nisha, I was also surprised by the gender. And I'm sure this speaks to my own biases. I thought that it was a boy who kept speaking it, and I think only by the end of it, I was like, oh, okay, makes sense. Yeah, so I really did like.
Yeah, I get that. I thought it was a boy myself, and then I was like, oh no, that's me. That's me. Why did I think that? So yeah, so that was very surprising for me too. Okay. All right, so for the second question, I wanted to look at the form. So each of the books uses an epistolary form. So Dear Mrs. Naidu is made up of letters written by Sarojini, the protagonist, Mrs. Naidu, deceased Indian activist and poet. And the boy at the back of the class includes drawings and lists of questions and plans with each step illustrated, and notes passed in class, letters and newspaper articles. So, to what extent do you think these narrative choices and the structure help to engage the young reader? So, we'll start with someone else this time. Maybe Hannah, would you go first this time? That's okay with you?
Yeah, no, so it was interesting because I listened to The Boy at the Back of the Class. So as an audiobook. So I didn't know that those forms were in the book. But then when I got your list of questions, I went in school, I got a copy and looked at it. So I've looked at all of the pictures and things now. But I think I think children do really respond really, really well to things. It breaks up the text, and it's just a different sort of visual element that engages them. So I think the things that I saw in The Boy at the Back of the Class worked really, really well. And the letters from Sarah and Jeannie just endeared me to her straight away. I liked how personally she writes, like even the where she's written something and then crossed it out and then written something again. It's like being inside her head. And that was something that I really enjoyed, and I thought that other children would really enjoy as well. I also like how she edited her thoughts because she didn't want to offend Mrs. Naidu in certain. So I think there's someone calls someone an idiot, but it's not an idiot at one stage in the book. And I really like that she's kind of filtering her thoughts, because that tells you a lot about her as a person as well as the characters around her. So I thought both forms worked really well.
Right. Yeah, it's true. It made it very personal, and it told us a lot about her. What she crossed out it told us a lot about her. If we come to Nishta, what do you think about that?
I think it was really interesting because when I was in school, we did read a couple of poems by Sarojini Naidu, but I mean, we never got to understand her in this capacity, which fiction thankfully provides us for us. Um, Her writing letters in a way, I mean, after I finished reading it, I felt that Sarojini writing letters to Mrs. Naidu acts as a way where she defies her invisibility, especially because she's a child of the margins. I mean, she's been marginalized all her life, and this is her only way to document her thoughts and put herself out there. Like she almost inserts herself uh, into the politics around her while writing these letters and presumes an audience, which even when children journal, they hardly presume an audience. But when you write a letter, you're presuming an audience. You know that somebody else is also going to read it, and it's not just going to be kept to you. So I thought that was really interesting. Um, and again, as Hannah pointed out earlier, I loved how she crossed certain words, especially, because that's such an Indian thing, because in India, you wouldn't talk about death so openly. It would be almost offensive to say that, oh my God, somebody's died. And her crossing that out constantly, although it is a reminder for her that this person is not around anymore, and they were like a big figure in history, but not anymore. Um, it is such I think that was the most innocent thing that kept coming across in the book again and again. And even if we get to the boy at the back of the class, I felt that um, the pictures were something like, if because I was thinking about Roald Dahl, that just came to my mind. They were absolutely not like Roald Dahl's pictures that you see in their books. They were quite concrete in a way. Initially, when you look at the pictures, they act as a way of documenting memory. There's a first picture of a chair, and then there's another picture of something that has a scope of being forgotten, and that's why he was drawing them. But then they changed into plans, certain concrete plans, and I feel like that showed, at least to me, that showed like an inward journey for the narrator, because initially you're trying to document memory, and then you're making strategies to help somebody else out. So I thought that that was a more I mean, that showed the child's path to clarity in certain ways, is how I looked at the narrative style that both the authors had used.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. But yes, I hadn't thought. I really had just looked at the plans mostly, and I had forgotten really that there was the chair and the pomegranate, and yeah. Shivani, what do you think about that? Can you?
I think the letter format creates a kind of first person bond, because Sarojini is writing to someone who is already dead. So she is often more honest to someone she is writing to than she could ever be with her teachers or her parents or her friends. So it creates a kind of confessional tone, and that also mirrors the secret emotional world of a child, I would say. Because I remember as a kid, I also used to write journals. I used to write all the things that I cannot say out loud to my parents or to my friends. So I felt a bit relatable right there. And it also transformed the reader from an observer into confident, a friend. Because here we can get into the emotional world of the narrator itself. And it just makes those heavy themes of social justice and all that feel like more of a personal conversation and not a very textbook kind of lesson. I also feel that in this book, the author is trying to humanize the past. The Roshni Naidu is not alive anymore. So I felt it was a kind of intertextuality that it takes a figure from the history book and turns her into a mentor. Teaches the readers that history is not always a closed chapter. It can sometimes be a dialogue and encourages us to look into the historical figures not as a distant myth, but as people whose ideas still can be used for modern problems like the right to education thing. So I'm pretty sure people are not aware of Indian schools and how they function. But I would say exactly the way she has mentioned the government schools, some of the government school in India still function the very same way. It is saddening, but it is the truth. And from a structural standpoint, I feel letters provide natural stopping points because for the younger generation who are reading this book, they wouldn't like to take heavy loads, heavy readings at once. So these episodic nature of the book provides a kind of narrative feel where they can read and then they can stop. So, and also that I feel that these letters have been written in heat of the moment situation. Like Sarojini felt something, she comes back, she writes about it. So there is no filter there. She is writing exactly how she feels. It's very natural and feels very personal to me also. So yeah, that's my opinion on this.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of the idea that history is still alive. It's not necessarily dead. Of course it is. You know, we have to keep it alive. Oh, that's so interesting. All right. Ragmita, would you go next? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I think building on what Shivani said, I also thought about the epistolary form first as a sort of, a plot device that there was a reason for suspense. So when Sarojini writes, yeah, so actually I know what I'm going to do, but I don't want to spoil it for you, so I'll tell you later. So there's a certain suspense that is maintained throughout the story, which encourages you to read. But I was also thinking that from a more diegetic perspective, these sort of letters, or in Alexa's case, the plans, also sort of allow the child to reflect. It is, as Shivani said, a bit raw, yes, but it's still reflected. In the sense that there's a little bit of filter. And a lot of times when, for example, Nisha pointed out, when she crossed out dead, then she crossed out not alive, then she crossed out from a different time, something she crossed out, and then she's like historical. So there's a certain sort of filter, and I think those uh omissions, those sort of crossing out, also shows more of the child's personality to come through, because then they're putting very active effort into recounting the events in a specific way. It's not just that it's happening like that, but they're recounting it. And I thought that the plans then also sort of uh highlight how the child itself is thinking about it. There's a very step by step process. Like, the idea, of course, is a eureka moment, but the overall process becomes guidelines. So I thought that they also sort of work a little bit like a almost pedagogic tool to the child reader who's reading it. Oh, that this is how you might make your plans if you want to save the world, or maybe smaller or rather different things, as Sarojini puts it.
Okay, right. So yeah, so we're seeing the children's thought processes and how they think. That is interesting. All right. Andy, what do you think about this?
Well, I thought it was a great pairing of books because even though they take that unique child's voice, because of the differences, one's a journal, one is a letter, you get a completely different vibe from it, even though they're doing the same kind of thing in that you're doing the kid's voice, which is wonderful. Firstly, it's such a good vehicle for humour, right? Which is so important in YA fiction. If you don't get kids laughing and enjoying it, the book will fall on deaf ears. So straight away, you have those kind of inside jokes that you as the reader get, even if the narrator, the kid, doesn't really get it themselves, which I think is a wonderful conceit. I think it's beautiful. The letter style to Mrs. Naidu, hand on heart, I hadn't really known much about Mrs. Naidu at all. So I spent the last couple of weeks looking into her, and wow, what a kick-ass woman, amazing. And really interesting in dialogic meaning making, right? So when you read that, you're reading a letter to Mrs. Naidu. And you find out about Mrs. Naidu and how she wanted Hindus and Muslims to work together and be together, and she wanted female emancipation, all these wonderful things. So you, as the reader, can't help but take on some of those attributes. So you, even though I have nothing in common with Mrs. Naidu, because I'm being addressed as Mrs. Naidu, even as the reader, you kind of, I don't know, you feel a kinship, you feel a connection, not only to the character who's writing to you, but you as the reader, who isn't Mrs. Naidu, but you're being addressed as Mrs. Naidu. So I don't know if it's playing around with neural plasticity or if it's a clever thing. It's absolutely wonderful. And in the journal, of course, in the boy at the back of the class, it's even on the surface there is this similarity. You get a dialogic meaning making because you're operating in an almost unvetted way, whereas Sorojini is negotiating her language for Mrs. Naidu. Although that gets easier the more you go through the book, right? As Sorojini and Mrs. Naidu become closer in Sorojini's mind, they're now friends, you know, the bit where she goes, oh, we'll have chai together one day, you know, wherever you are, I will have a glass of chai and it'd be lovely. So I think that growing intimacy between Mrs. Naidu and Sorojini is one of the high points for me.
Okay, wow, that's interesting. That's a great answer. Great answers, everyone. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, this is great. All right. Shall we go on to question 3? So the themes of friendship and belonging are the drivers that spur the characters to act. Sarojini wants to be friends with Amir, even though he's changed schools, and she overcomes her own prejudice against Deepti and admires her as a new friend. And the protagonist of The Boy at the Back of the Class makes a promise in chapter 1 to make friends with the new boy. So how successfully do you think this openness to new friends demonstrates each protagonist's willingness to accept new ideas and new angles from which to solve their problems? Oh, I feel like I have to choose. Shivani, would you like to start? Is that okay?
Yeah. So I think in Dear Mrs. Naidu, Sarojini's friendship with Amir and Dipti serves helps her to grow her political and intellectual awakening. So her openness about things is not just about her personality trait, it is also the very mechanism that allows her to solve the problem of her education. I feel Amir represents the world that Sarojini thinks she wants for herself, a private school, an English medium background, the kind of fame it comes with, everything. So, by fighting to maintain this friendship with Amir, who has now moved on to a different social sphere, Sarojini has to confront to the reality of the class divide. She has to constantly face this difference of class between her and Amir, I feel. And I also feel that she realizes that friendship shouldn't be dictated by the schools. And this openness has allowed her to see that problem is not that she's not in a private school, but that all schools should be equal. So her loyalty to Amir forces her to look into the bigger picture of RTE, Right to Education Act. Moreover, I feel Sarojini initially judges Dipti and she's not much into being friends with her. And that is one of the most honest part of the book. She views Dipti from a very narrow lens initially, assuming that she is tough or different because of her background, of course. When Sarojini allows Dipti in, she isn't just gaining a friend, she's also gaining a kind of strategic partner. Because Dipti brings a different kind of resilience and a ground level perspective that Sarojini lacks. So this demonstrates that solving systematic problem like a school requires a diverse alliance between the people. By accepting Dipti, Sarojini accepts the idea that strength comes from not just single person, but from the collective action. And it's more of an not an individual merit, it's more of a group merit, more of a social merit together. And I think also that she forms a kind of friendship with Vimla Madam also. Initially, she is not much liking Vimla ma'am. She is not in favor of her, but eventually she likes Vimla ma'am, and she creates a kind of a warm friendship with her, and that also helps her grow throughout. So I think the protagonist's openness to the friendship is the most successful element of this entire book. Sarojini's willingness to bridge the gap between everything and overcome the biases, which initially seems very impossible, but eventually takes a really nice turn, I would say. And here's a question for all of you, I would think. So, do you guys think that the story would have been effective if Sarojini had succeeded in her goals entirely on her own without anyone's influence? So, I would like a perspective on this.
Yeah, for Grace. Super. So who would like to go? Who would like to answer? That's a good question. Anyone? Yeah, Vagmita.
Yeah, I don't really think that it would have been the book that it is if Sarojini, or for that matter, Alexa, had succeeded in their goals by themselves. Because I think the very sort of point of these two books is to bring people together. And sort of diverging into your question as well, Laura, I think this sort of openness comes very different for Laura, for sorry, for Alexa and for Sarojini, because because Alexa is also quite young. She's 9 years old. Sarojini is 12 years old. And I think Sarojini becomes far more conscious of those differences. Her consciousness of her differences with Deepthi is, of course, clear. But her consciousness of a difference with Amir, for example, there's quite a bit of emphasis on it's a Hindu girl and a Muslim boy, especially in the context of love jihad, where Muslim men are seen as predators for falling in love with Hindu women. This sort of idea becomes even more complicated because it is then intimacy, it is then friendship that is seen as really threatening to these sort of political ideologies. So I do think that this is it's their openness to make friends, but also openness to engage with people, because you can't really understand the world or its people if you don't engage with them. That I think sort of allows them to accomplish their goals, but also that sort of allows them to grow as people or grow their hearts and minds, as Miss Annie would put it. So I think, yeah, that openness is really important.
Okay, right, great. Would anyone else like to add? Yeah, Hannah?
Yeah, I'd like to pick up on that because I thought the main difference between the two was Alexa's age. And to me, actually, she reads as a lot younger. I know she's supposed to be 9 to 10, but when I first read the book, I didn't put her at that age. I thought she was sort of 7-ish, 8-ish. So I can understand why the authors made her older, because it's easier to have them take a train by themselves to go and see the Queen and all of that, get the bus into school by themselves, that kind of things. But I think she is very, very innocent for a child of if she's meant to be 9 or 10, there are lots of concepts that I think the average 9 or 10-year-old, especially a 9 or 10-year-old whose mother works in a library, reads the newspapers, takes them on day trips on a Sunday, would have a wider understanding about the world, which Alexa does not have. And her openness is due to her upbringing, but it's also due to the fact that she just doesn't understand some of the opinions of other people around her. So it's not that she understands them and believes something different. It's that she hasn't sort of encountered them and doesn't really understand the context of the things. I mean, it would probably be because of the character that we know that she is, and the influence that her mother has on her, that she probably would stay very open-minded. But the fact that she hadn't come into contact with some of those biases, I found a bit surprising for a child of 9 or 10. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then Saranji is obviously older, and she comes across as a bit more streetwise. So I think she has a much better understanding of the biases of the adults around her, and she is true to her own beliefs. She's friends with who she wants to be friends with, but I think she, because she has a better understanding, she's also more aware of her own limitations, and for that reason, as well as being her openness being sort of squashed by some of the adults and the opinions around her, she needs a bit more inspiration from some of the adults to go for what she believes in. So, there's lots of adults around her who do support her, like her teacher and the lawyer, who say, no, these are your rights and you need to take them on. And actually, I suppose, is that why she's writing to Mrs. Naidu? Probably. So it's almost like she's writing to kind of like a piece of herself, in that she is a character from history who also went for things that she believed in and was a really sort of strong character. And if someone told you no, that didn't mean that the answer was no.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. I hadn't thought of the age. Yeah, the age group. The age. Andy, you have your hand up. What do you think?
First of all, Shivani, I think that the instrumentality of the adults, especially in Mrs. Naidu, was vital, and I think it was almost built into the author's point. Oh, I'm sorry, let me just kill that. In that it was about nudging them, right, and for them to use the power that they've got and their position in society that they've got to actually act in a certain way. And with even Madame, who's like head of a children's rights organization, right, in India, because she operates at a huge scale, those smaller bits kind of go through the cracks. So it's her being nudged into community activism and, well, I can make a difference here. And I think really important to it. And so the other question about the friendships and openness to new ideas, it's almost tautologous, I think, and it is their openness to friendships that is their openness to new ideas. They kind of equal each other. In fact, there's a bit at the end of the boy at the back of the class, Alexa's talking about Josie's parents, I think, who are a little bit reformy, who are a bit, anti-refugee kids or whatever. And she puts Mr. Fry into a category of, okay, he's kind of beyond hope because he's using it in a way for political power and all of this. But Josie's parents, it's just they haven't met new friends. If they could meet new friends, they'll meet new ideas, and that will make them more open to new ideas is by being open to friends. So I think it's one and the same thing.
Oh, okay, yes, all right. And Anisha, what do you think about that?
I think I wanted to talk about the exactly same thing about the whole point about Josie's parents, and how they talk about the openness within it. Even I think if you're talking about let's say if you're talking about the boy at the back of the class, I was quite what Hannah said earlier. I was also quite awestruck by the fact that the protagonist Alexa has this immediate sense of empathy for Ahmed. And I like in when we look at Sarojini, her whole empathy about Deepthi comes about in a way where she is also gaining something from Deepthi, which is a new whole perspective, and we where she's also really looking up to Deepthi because she is this really confident um, girl. But when we're looking at the birth, when we're looking at the boy at the back of the class, I was also, I mean, that was also one of my questions about why this. I mean, of course, it's a child, and we hope that they're empathetic, but this consistent empathy that you see throughout the book despite the hurdles, and like in the first instance the child has no idea about who Ahmed is other than the fact that they're quite smitten by their eyes. So I thought that was very interesting, and that almost opened us a window into the child's mind. Secondly, if you're getting to like Dear Mrs. Naidu, I felt that it was very interesting to see Sarojini and then Amir, and both of them being of different religions in a country like India, where religion tends to be really polarized matter. And then you have Deepthi, because then there is this whole class division where you have children who go to private schools and you have children whose parents are house help at like rich people's houses, and then you have children who are of labor or who are of the laborer class, which actually falls to the most bottom, which sadly is at the most bottommost place of the socio-economic hierarchy in the country. And for this child to also have had that nuanced lens, for her to be able to understand that these two are different, especially because now Amir goes to a private school. I mean, not that she views them differently, but she also has her own biases against Deepthi, who also uses slurs and words that that she's been barred from listening to. It becomes her openness then becomes a very nuanced way to navigate, and it becomes almost like a site for the child to navigate those socioeconomic differences, which is such a grounding reality in the book. So I thought that was really interesting. And even about the whole parts about adults, I felt that both the books, teachers play such a huge role for both the protagonists. You have Miss Annie over here and you have Mrs. Khan over here. In fact, at one place, I remember like when I was teaching children for the last 2 years, and I worked at this alternative school, we talked about, I worked at the school which was like it's called a Krishnamurti school, Jiddu Krishnamurti, who's a philosopher and educator. And we would often talk about ideas where we talk about non-conformity and we talk about fearless learning and no competition, all these things. And children would find it very difficult to, especially younger kids would find it very difficult to understand bigger words like non-conformity. And when Miss Annie says, you ask questions so that you can grow your brains and your heart, I immediately feel like that was something I should have also probably said. Um, so here you almost see that the adult has a very loving role to play in both of these books, and it's almost that they almost break the binary between a child and an adult, where an adult is also learning from the child and a child is also learning from an adult. So that was quite interesting to see.
Yes. Oh, that's great. I had a question about like what was your favorite adult, adult character, but I took it out because there were too many questions. But yeah, that's the adults are great too. I think that was everyone. So, question 4 is the book deals with difficult themes: the right of families to seek asylum, children's right to education, and the bigotry and prejudice of some people against those who are seeking to improve the lives and futures of children. To what extent do you believe the book you read, or the books, or both books, do they show that children can move the needle on these issues and get us closer to respecting the rights of all children? And then what role did the adults play in this? Did they strengthen or weaken? So, Nishta, you've talked about the adults strengthening. So anybody else have ideas on children having an effect and the adults, what's their role? And Andy, would you? Oh, no, sorry. Hannah shows her hand up. Sorry, Andy, I'll come to you after.
So I thought it was interesting that in both books, there were adults working to support the child and adults working to not support the child. And in both books, they were kind of equally helped and not helped. by the adults. So that means that the power to actually make the change was the child. So they're not doing it alone, but there's as many adults helping them as adults not helping them sometimes. So it's the child, even though sometimes the differences are quite small, it's the child who's making the change. They're the catalyst, and it wouldn't be happening without the protagonist in the book. And I think, and when we talk about adults, I liked that in both books they looked at the power of the media, again, in both directions. There's like media that is helping them and media that is going against them, and again, it's the child that has to show what the right thing to do is and get the media on their side. I thought there was a lovely bit at the end of Mrs. Naidu who where they talk about shame. I don't want to ruin it in case someone else reads it out, but it was sort of it was shame that brought the adults onto their side. So for some adults, that's what it takes to bring them onto the side. It's shaming them into action.
Okay, right. And Andy, what did you think?
I think I spoke a bit about that before, right? The needle moving thing, and I think that's a powerful bit in it. I think in reality, for me, one of the most I spoke about them before, Josie's parents, who we don't ever meet, but they're the ones. The writers clearly have a good idea about who are the good guys and who are the bad guys in the story. It's the ones who are supportive, who are more open, and the ones who are closed and more scared. Okay, but Josie's parents, even though we don't meet them, I don't think we meet them. Do we meet them? Does anybody remember meeting Josie's parents? No. Okay, so that bit was kind of the hidden bit in there. It's where she goes, no, he can't be changed. But they, just by meeting new people, having conversations like this with people from other countries, by doing that, that's what can actually affect. And I thought it was a marvelously delicate way of jamming in the author's message without it being obvious. It was just delicately done. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm talking to the point, but that's the point I took from it. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, no, that was, because these, I mean, we all see people who don't ever meet anybody who's not exactly the same as them, and so they're just not open because they haven't learned how to be open. Yeah, so these books, we have them learning a little bit.
And in another way, it's kind of true of the aunties as well. So with the journalist who came round, right, who they all were fearful of her because you're going to portray our kids in this way, you're going to show us like this. So everybody has their groupings. It's just really cool to get outside of them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Shivani, do you have an idea on about that?
Yeah. So basically, I think Sarojini, so this particular phrase, there is the moving the needle. So I think Sarojini moves the needle most effectively when she stops comparing her life to Amit's private school friends and starts investigating the RT Act with Vimla Madam. So that's one key turning point in this novel. I feel her partnership with Dipti also shows that for a child to move a needle on systematic issues like education, they must first move the needle on their own prejudices. They have to come out of their own prejudices. By the time she is organizing her community to save the Ambedkar school, she is no longer just a student. She is also an advocate. Not officially, of course, but she is also an advocate using the legacy of real Mrs. Naidu, of Sarojini Naidu, to demand a better future. So, and about the role of the adults, I would say. So, Vimla Madam serves as a vital mentor, and she empowers Sarojini with the vocabulary of rights and laws rather than simply trying to save her. She asks Sarojini to do things on her own instead of doing it for her.
Yep.
So also I felt that there is this one thing that I noticed in this novel, that until and unless Saroshni and the other children prove that they are capable of moving the needle, the adult did not come to the front to help them. So yeah, the indifferent adult represent the biography of low expectations, I would say. So which makes Sarojini's eventual success feel more earned and authentic rather than more like a fairy tale win. Yeah.
Yes, yes, because there are so many obstacles, and the adults were so negative, especially the aunties. There was so much negativity, and don't do that. Vagmita?
Yeah, I was also thinking about how, I mean, it's clear that the children are not the decision makers, clearly. They're not passing the laws, they're not changing things in that direct way. But I was thinking how, and I thought that the word indifferent adult that Shivani used was particularly useful. But because I was also thinking, well, why are the children doing these things? Why are the adults not doing these things? And of course, it's not just indifference. It's when you're dealing with so many things, then things sort of change priorities. But it's also, I think, other than just the fact that the children bring more inspiration, they also bring a sort of hope, in that the aunties or the headmasters, or even like, I think Mr. Greg's was it, there are people who sort of lost hope in the kind of things that exist. The aunties are all like, we've tried, it won't happen. The headmaster has tried, won't happen. Mr. Greg's is like, I wouldn't fully say lost hope, but like it's a certain losing perspective where they will hurt you. And that sort of, I think, hope is something that children are effectively able to add, because well, they are hopeful. They have been disappointed less, maybe. But I think then the idea of the children acting as catalyst works very well with both of the books, because clearly the children cannot make the decisions, but they can push for the decisions.
Oh, so interesting with the hope. Yes, because yes, they haven't been disappointed, and they are. I mean, we remember when we were full of hope. I suspect. I still am, though. By the way, I have a lot of hope. Nishta, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that everyone said so far. I feel that, as Wagmita pointed it out earlier, of course, they're very hopeful, but something else is that children are always looking for some kind of an adventure. So, of course, they do want to change circumstances around them, and they want to do it for a better world, and they hope for a better world. But there's also this whole idea about being adventurous, trying out something that they haven't done before. And at least, like from when I was a child, from the books that I'd read, everybody was always wanting to have adventures, wanting to do something new that adults didn't want them to do. And you see that happening in both of these cases again, that you do see children wanting to make a change, of course, to want to make a change, but also because to relish the whole spirit of um, adventure. I think that's the only thing that I can add on to.
Okay, great. Yeah, I hadn't thought of the adventure. Yes, children always want to go on adventures, but it's very adventurous when they do some fun things too. And it makes the books more fun for the reader because, of course, as children, as you said, Nisha, children always want to go on adventures. So they can in these books, they can go on things that they might not be able to do in real life. So that adds that for them. All right, so let's, I think. Question 5. So maybe we've already answered some of it, but I'll ask it anyway. Let's see. Let's look into the protagonist in the book that you read, or the books, if you read both. Was there something that endeared them to you, like a trait or their voice or anything, and made you want to follow their story? So when you were reading, you wanted to follow on. And do you think that trait or those traits would engage a young reader in your country, and why? So we're really talking about the protagonists and their characteristics. I don't know. Nobody's raising a hand, so I'll have to pick, I guess. Yeah, Vagmita, thank you. then Nishta.
Yeah. I was thinking, because like Alexa and Sarojini are very different people. Like, if I had to really compare the personalities, I would have thought that Alexa would be a bit more similar to Deepthi, though of course far more naive. Deepthi does know a lot more about the world, but they have very different personalities, Alex and Sarojini. And I was thinking about what made both of them so engaging as protagonists. And I really, and I think I mentioned it before also, I really think it's because both of them are so curious that Alexa's reaction, first reaction to a boy that she's never met and that she's heard awful rumors about is, oh, let's make a friend. And then she makes a whole questionnaire. It's almost as if she wants to make a friend so that she needs the answers to all of those things. And with Sarojini also, I thought that it was very interesting that she was so curious, even though she kept telling herself, no, no, adults must not be asked questions. That's the primary rule of interacting with adults, but then she still asks. She's still curious. And if she doesn't ask, she sort of maneuvers her way into asking them the questions. So I thought that was the main trait that sort of really hooked me in, because these sort of child narratives, they just really started questioning things that I took for granted. That, well, why is it this way? Um, and I thought that was the main trait that endeared me to both of them.
Okay, yeah. So this, yes, things that we would even question, we would wonder about. Yeah, okay, that's it's great. Wait a minute. Nishta, you had your hand up. Okay.
I don't. Before I forget this, Vagmita, you said that that Alexa is more like Deepthi.
A
I just
little
wanted to
bit,
correct it.
very, very little bit. I mean, I think their views of life are completely different. I think Deepthi, and she says as much that I'm happy, and I'm so confident because like I don't have time to be scared. And
Mm.
I don't think that's Alexa's case at all. I don't think she knows what she needs to be scared of really for the
Yeah.
most of the book.
Mm.
But just personality wise, and the very confident, very brash, I will do sort of what I want, I will meet new people kind of way. I did think they were a bit similar. Not in worldviews at all though.
No, I even when I was looking at personality traits, I felt like Alexa's a much nicer person than even more than Sarojini. I felt niceness in the sense that she just generally is kind to everyone around. Even when she's talking about racism, she's talking about it through adults, that this adult said that about the other adult, rather than saying it herself. Herself, she the only person that she dislikes, very outright. No, the two people that she dislikes is Mr. Hines um and the bully Brandon. Um, Whereas with Sarojini, she does have her own um views, I feel, about the aunties, about Deepthi, about even the whole nice and just Miss Annie. Um, she's a little more opinion. I'm sure it's to do with age and to do with socioeconomic difference. Um, but I just felt like Alexa was inherently too nice and too kind to everyone around her. That is something I didn't feel. Deepthi was much more rooted to reality, as you pointed it out earlier. I felt like for me, Sarojini, what really endeared me towards her was that she constantly rectifies whatever she's saying because she's also reflecting constantly. Like one of my favorite parts was even about the whole death part. Some place she says, Mrs. Naidu, I know you were the smartest women, and then she cancels around and says people. Um, to then make it a very normalized thing. I thought that was such a strategic move for the author to have it used and for the child to have thought about it. And that really endeared me towards her. And I really wanted to follow that path. And for Alexa as well, as I mentioned earlier, I was genuinely quite wonderstruck about why was she so kind. Like her world is much, it's quite pink. It's more pink if you compare it with Sarojini's world. I mean, of course, there's a different kind of safety that she's also being brought up into that Sarojini isn't. And I'm not trying to negotiate that, but even otherwise, she doesn't have um anything mildly negative, even about one of her friends to have said. Although she's known her friends for a longer period of time, and she knows both the pros and the cons of being friends with them, she's only too happy to be around, and I thought that was really hopeful, and that really endeared me towards her.
Okay, well, you reminded me that I thought Alexa was a little bit too optimistic and nice all the time. So I did feel like that when I was reading. Andy, what do you think?
Just a quick note on the drawing of the character Sarojini that I thought was brilliant. There's a bit where she's with, is it Vimala Madam? Vimsala Madam? What was her name? Vimala?
Vimla.
Anybody? Vimala, okay. And it's when she's in the office, and it's all surrounded by all the books and all the grandeur and all the teak, and how scary she is, this super villain and an incredibly intelligent woman. And it's just one little moment that really endears you to a Sarojini, is when she goes, yeah, and she's obviously a very clever woman, probably even more clever than I am. And I thought that was just such a lovely little line, like, me as this little girl. Yeah, I'm probably as clever as her. She might be a little bit clever. I'll give her that. Maybe not. And I thought that was just such a clever way in. I'm glad one of you just mentioned Brandon, because I'd forgotten the guy's name, the bully. That was one of the bits I didn't like in the book. And I really enjoyed the book. I thought Brandon was, I get it. I've written those kind of, school books where you need things to move the plot forward, and you need the baddie. You need these bits. I just thought he was probably one of the most two-dimensional of the characters. I didn't really get much from it, apart from, you suck, and that was it. It's like I wanted more from it, So if I ever meet the author, I'm having a chat about that bit. But all the rest, lovely. But I thought Brandon was kind of weak, to be honest. Sorry to be negative.
No, he was just the bully. That was all he was.
Yeah, he was a stereotype. He was just, he was locked in. He didn't, even, as I said, Josie's parents had movement and we didn't meet them, whereas the bully was just locked in and then out of school and done. And it was kind of lazy writing, to be honest. It wasn't so good.
Okay, all right. I've lost track of where we are and who hasn't spoken. So, Hannah, thank you.
That's okay.
and then Shivani. Okay.
Yeah, I was instantly endeared to Sarojini because I think I really liked the fact that she wasn't like a perfect character. She had in many ways, she had her own prejudices. And as well as changing the minds of other people, she had to change her own mind throughout the book. So I thought there was sort of a bit more like movement on her character throughout the book. And also the very nature of the letters. I thought letters are such a clever way to weave in backstory and that's especially helpful when you're reading about a character that is not from your own culture, because it was sort of weaved in all these things that were important for context were like weaved in through the letters. And I think her character went on more of a journey than Alexa's character did, who was just sort of, she was curious and brave and innocent, and that didn't really change. Like the circumstances changed, but she herself as a character, she didn't really have like a flaw from the start that was then, and then also talking about, I was the same as Andy about the Brandon the bully. I didn't like Brandon the bully either. I thought like he even had his henchmen, didn't he, clenching their fists and that kind of thing. So that was, it would have been nice if, not saying his mind has changed, but we'd seen like a little glimmer of hope with him or his comrades towards their cause as well.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah. All right. Shivani, I think. Yeah. It's your turn.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what endeared me the most to Sarojini was the kind of rhythmic evolution of her voice, specifically her transition from a performative innocence to a very sharp satirical maturity. So, as a literature student myself, I was fascinated by how her unreliable internal monologue gradually sharpened into a tool for social critique. So Sarojini poses what I would like to call is reflective stubbornness. Yeah. So she's not loud or she's not rebellious for the sake of it. She is deeply observant. She notices the smell of expensive soap on Amir's uniform, or the way teachers' silence speaks louder than their voice. Also, there is this one part where she tells the principal that I told the principal that my name is Saroshni and I was named after a woman who was not afraid of going to the jail or the British soldiers. So I think that that is such a like brave thing to do. So she is the trait of her made me want to follow her story because it felt intellectually honest. She does not have all the answers for sure. She often gets things wrong, especially in her initial judgment of Dipti or her willingness to ride through her confusion until it turns into clarity. She goes through things until it turns into something that's beautiful. And that's, I think that's how the academia works as well. Start writing on something and you are initially very confused and then eventually you find your way. And that's Sarojini's personality is, I feel. Initially it feels a bit messy and then eventually her stubbornness and what I would like to call her aggressive empathy towards people. She does not just feel for people, she investigates them. And yeah, like I cannot help but I root for her. More and more I read the book, I root for her character. I find her intellectual curiosity about people far more interesting than a very perfect protagonist. So yeah, that's it. I loved it. I loved the whole character arc of her.
Okay, very good. Very good. Yeah, you guys have some great ideas there that I hadn't thought about, so really interesting. I'm looking at the time. I think that we have time. So we're on question 6. And this is the part where you get to read your passage, your favorite passage from the book, or both books if you have two. And then tell us a little bit about why you chose it. You know, why, I mean, we probably will hear why you chose it, but you tell us why you chose it really behind your idea behind that. So, any volunteers to go first? Shivani, yes. And then
Yeah,
Nishta.
so because the initial point that I mentioned has something to do with this, the favorite part of the book that I read. So I have the book with me. Okay. So yeah, I have marked it. Just a minute. Yeah. So it goes on like today I saw Amir new school uniform. It's crisp and smells like expensive soap. When we stood next to each other, I felt like a charcoal sketch standing next to a color photograph. He talked about his orientation and his swimming gala. And I realized that we don't just go to different schools anymore. We live in completely different versions of the same city. The right to education says we are supposed to be equal, but if the world was a seesaw, Amir would be high up in the air and I had been stuck in the mud at the bottom. I wondered, Mrs. Naidu, did you ever feel like a charcoal sketch? Or did you always know you were meant to be in color? So I chose this particular paragraph because it highlights the kind of imagery of inequality. As a literature student, I am drawn to this charcoal versus color metaphor. I think it perfectly captured the psychological impact of the class divide on a child from a very early age. It shows that moving the needle that we were initially talking about, just about fixing the buildings. It's about fixing the way children or the coming generation sees the world, perceive the world, or perceive their own value compared to their peers, which is something I feel that lacks in most of the societies because we absolutely live in a capitalist society and everything, every point of view that we have shaped from the very early childhood that, okay, we are poor, they are rich, we are dark, they are white. And these binaries sometimes makes us feel very inferior to the others in comparison. So yeah, and this is one of the paragraph that touched me the most.
Yeah, that was beautifully read as well. Yes, I really felt that. Oh, thank you. Nisa, what's your chosen passage?
I liked both the books. I mean, whenever we have questions like these, I become really nervous because I don't think I have a particular section that I would have liked the most. But while reading this, I don't know, maybe because I really like sunsets, is why I thought of this particular passage. It's from The Boy at the Back of the Class. It's on page number 163. Um, it goes like this. I waited a long time for my brain to think of something. But when Mum came home, she found me still sitting at the kitchen table, pressing the snowing Captain Haddock buttons on my pencil case. I couldn't think of anything, not even after she came and sat with me to watch the sunset. I love watching the sunset with Mum. She calls it the magic hour because you can see colors you won't ever see again and birds that might fly forever, swimming across the skies together. But I can only ever do it properly with Mum. I've tried to watch the sunset on my own and feel just as happy, but I can't seem to do it at all. It doesn't work. I felt like this paragraph was quite, it acted as a space of transition because the protagonist wasn't able to think about any ideas, and they also got to know about Saira, the sister who couldn't make it to the UK. And then the protagonist has some ideas immediately in like couple of pages. And I felt that this space acted as quite a transitory zone. It also made the book, I think it's slowed the pace of the narrative. Um, there was some stillness in this whole idea, and I really like the visual imagery. And even along with the visual imagery and the stillness, I felt that it highlighted the bond between the protagonist and the mother really well in this particular scene. It brought about that relationship in a very delicate way out there. You like at least I almost had a sense that the child is that the mother is a single mother and the child doesn't have another parent because it's I don't know, it's very intimate in a way when you watch sunset with someone and you almost see the birds go away, the colors that you've never seen before. And when the mother's not around, you almost cannot experience the same feeling again. Um, so I don't know, when I was reading this, it just struck me as one of the many other interesting paragraphs also that I actually liked.
Thank you, Nisha. It was beautifully read, and yes, that the idea of that was transitioning to, and then the bond. Oh, thank you, Hannah.
The part that I chose was from the Mrs. Naidu, and it's on page 236. I'm going to talk to the reporter when she comes, Amma. Talking to a reporter, why? Because the media is a powerful tool for justice. Like I said, I might be a lousy detective, but I'm a pretty good lawyer. Saranji, these reporters are useless. And Amma started. And because it's not fair, I said, interrupting my Amma for maybe the first time in my life. Why should kids pick up garbage and parents lose wages when the government is supposed to do all this? Why is everyone always trying to take things away from the people who don't have very much to begin with? Amma sighed, and then she said, if I knew that, Kana, I wouldn't be breaking my back every day. We were both quiet then, Mrs. Naidu, because sometimes you understand someone better after just a couple of words than you do after a lifetime of conversations. So I really liked that passage because it showed the character's growth so much. So one of the people that she had to stand up to was her mum, and it showed like her newfound strength and her newfound confidence in expressing the things that she didn't think were right.
Yes, okay, thank you. That was very well read. And you guys are making me like, getting all emotional with these passages. Oh, okay. So by the time we get finished, I'll be crying, probably. But Vagmita, do you have a nice passage that could make us get emotional?
Yeah, I have actually a passage that might cheer you up. Um,
Okay.
yeah. So I chosen passages from both books, but my passage is actually very similar to what Hannah just wrote out from Dear Mrs. Naidu. So I'll go with the letter actually that Alexa writes to Dear Your Highness, Majesty Queen of England. And the letter goes something like this. We wrote you a letter on Friday about Ahmet, our friend who's a refugee boy, and put 3 stamps on it so that the Royal Mail would get it to you faster. We've come to see you today because it's Wednesday already, and we thought that the Royal Mail might have lost the letter. And as the gates are closing on Friday, it means we haven't got much time to find Ahmed's family and bring them here so that they can all live together. We're outside the gates now. Tom's got brown hair, and I've got dark brown hair, and we're in our school uniforms, which are dark blue and grey, with pictures of a ship and a book on it, so that you can see us easily. We can't stay later than 1:30, because if we don't get home by the end of the school day, then our mums and Tom's dad and Josie and Michael will worry. Please let us come and see you as soon as you finish your breakfast. Yours sincerely, me and Tom. P.S. We've got extra tea bags for tea. And I thought this letter was really wonderful because, and I think as Nisha had pointed out, it really does sort of bring together the idea of adventure, of children adventuring, but also fighting for what they think is important to them. And I thought that the other thing that this passage really does very beautifully is that it really sees how the children sort of see themselves as equal to adults, which for Sarojini is something that she sort of learns. She has some idea of it, but then she says, "Oh, I was treated here as an adult that a certain way." But here, the children go out to meet the Queen of England, and they're like, "Oh, but what if she doesn't have enough tea bags? Or what if she doesn't have enough biscuits? Would our half-eaten packet of biscuit work?" And I think that's really beautifully put to sort of imagine the kind of equality, the kind of world that the kids are sort of imagining.
That was great. Thank you for the cheering, and it was very well read. That that you put that energy into it, that you feel behind it. Like, we're here at just outside the gates. So thank you. That was very good, very wonderful. And Andy, what is your passage?
Well, I chose the exact same passage as all of. No, I'm kidding. I didn't. Fortunately, I chose a different one. Oh, glasses. Now, I do have a stammer when I read aloud sometimes, so please excuse me if I stammer over the words. So this is from Dear Mrs. Naidu, and it's where Miss is getting passionate about issues, and I love the. Anyway, I'll just read it to you. Girls, Miss said in a voice that was low and scratchy, I believe in you, and I believe in us. I believe that together we can do this, but it's not going to be easy. There will be many obstacles in our way and many people who will discourage us. Then Miss put our hands in the middle of the table and folded her hands over them and stared at us with these wide, serious eyes, like an actress in a Canada serial who is totally overdoing it. Are you ready to struggle? She said. At first, we didn't realize that she wanted an answer, but when we didn't say anything, she kept that whole daughter-in-law in a serial thing going, so we both spoke. I guess so, I said. Sure, said Deepti. Even if we don't succeed, think of how much we will learn together, Miss said, sighing and looking out the window. She kept gripping our hands, and I really felt like I was on TV. Students like you are the reason I became a teacher, Miss said eventually, and her voice was all squishy and wobbly and full of water. Thank you, Miss, Deepti said. She didn't roll her eyes, but I know she wanted to. To be honest, Mrs. Naidu, so did I. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
I love the I love the puncturing of it. And we've all had teachers like that, or perhaps we are teachers like that, you know, and there's issues and we want to inspire and move on. And I just thought it was gorgeous seeing it through the kids' eyes, like, get over yourself. Okay, we get it. You know, and the holding the hands. It's beautiful. Very lovely scene.
That is, yeah. And so when the kids see adults getting all emotional, it's like, oh no, they're gonna cry again. You know? Oh, that was beautiful. That was beautiful. Okay, I think that we might have time if you have, so for question 7, if you had a book or other books for children or young people from your country that you would recommend that deal with prejudice or marginalized children. So I don't know if anyone has one. Yes, Shivani, you have one?
So I came across this one book recently. The book name is The Night Diary by Veera Hinandani.
Oh, yeah.
So this, yeah, you might have heard about it. It's a
Yeah.
very famous book actually, and it is set. The setting is of the 1947 partition of India, and this was an epistolary novel, and it consists of diary entries from a 12-year-old Nisha to her deceased mother, and kind of deals with religion prejudice, marginalization of refugees, and the story is like goes on like with Nisha and her family are forced to flee their home, becoming outsiders in their own land. And much like Nisha, I feel much like Sarojini, Nisha is also shy, and she finds her voice through writing. So it's a brilliant look, I would say, at how a child's perspective can humanize a massive, violent historical event. Also, there is this another book, Ice Candy Man, and oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot the author name. So, Ice Candy Man again deals with 1947 partition of India. So, why I'm suggesting Nobel for 19 like related to 1947 partition, because I'm a student of diasporic literature. I find it really interesting. So partition novels and diasporic literature excites me a lot. So these two novels, those deals with like these issues from a child's perspective. So yeah, these two novels I would recommend 110. Please go read it. Crash on them. It's too good, I would say. It's too good.
All right. Yes, I read the Night Diaries, and yes, it was amazing. Yeah, it's very good. So I will have to read the other one that you mentioned. All right. Nishta, have you got another one, a different one?
Yeah. A bunch of picture books that I really liked were Jumlo Walks. Again, the YY Girl is my one of my all-time favorites. This is another book called My Name is Gulab, which also deals with a child of a sanitary worker. Um, uh, and one book that I read with my children when I was teaching, another Indian book was this book called The Tiger Boy by Mitali Perkins. It is about a boy who lives in the Sundarbans. It's a geographical region in India, um, and tries to save a tiger um, over there. So it's a very, very interesting book. And I think when I read it with my children, we read it for like about 3 months, is how long we read it. And by the end of the book, some of them were crying, and we were very, very happy to have read that book. So I really enjoyed reading that book. It was really nice. I think that's the book that I picked over Dear Mrs. Naidu, but I'm very happy that I got to read both of them. Um, but I strongly recommend all of these books.
Great, thank you. Yes, I'm writing these down as we go. So thank you very much. Megmita, have you got one? Or more than one?
Yeah. So I was actually thinking of two books, and I'm sure Nisha is familiar with at least one of them, which is Kanna Panna. And Kanna Panna is about a blind boy. I think it's written by Zai Whitaker, and it's about a blind boy who sort of not to spoil, but then sort of like finds himself and then sort of just like it's a picture book and it's very short. And then it sort of explores his identity. Another one is Guthli Has Wings, and the author is Kanak Shashi. And it's about a child who's dealing with their gender identity, and the family is initially not very supportive, and then it sort of they come to terms with it, they become a bit more open about it. So I thought both of those books were really about marginalized children and how they sort of find themselves.
Hey, wow, thank you. So my reading list is getting longer here. This is excellent. Andy, have you got any?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Have I undone the mic?
Yeah. Yes.
So I'm going to be seriously cheeky now. I'm going to put forward a couple of my books. If you're curious about what's kind of the vibe in Sweden and Scandinavia and what we're reading in schools, then there's a book called Fantastic Me about it's actually set in the UK, but it's about the North-South divide, a new boy at school who's rejected because of his accent and their expectations of what the north of England are like. So that's one. Are we going to share links after this? Is there going to be a way? Because I haven't been able to write down all the books you've recommended. Laura, are you going to be?
Yeah, I was wondering too, because I don't know how to spell some of them, so I don't know if Mega can put them in the chat or send them in an email.
Okay.
I'll email them.
Yeah, because as I say, if you want to check out a slightly different vibe, what's going on in Sweden, the books are in English and translated into Swedish, but all the English versions are available online for free, so you can have a look. It's a different take on things. Sweden has different concerns. Obviously, a lot of migration concerns after what happened with Syria, and these stories reflect the ongoing conversation in Scandinavia about what's happening. So perfect for literature across borders, right?
Yes, perfect. Yes.
I know it's cheeky, but I'm going for it. So there you go.
That's great.
Oh,
yeah.
And Noughts and Crosses. I guess you guys have either read it or seen it, but wow, it's kick-ass, right? It's a good book.
Yeah. Thank you. Right, and Hannah, have you got one?
I do. I've lost my list, but it's okay because so there was an author which I wanted to recommend who writes quite a few books. A.M. Dasu, who writes. She wrote Boy Everywhere, and she was one of the World Book Day authors. She wrote one called Kicked Out, I think, last year, and that's a really popular book and looks at the similar type of themes. And then I've only just started this. It's a verse novel, but I guess it would be sort of about it would fit with the theme of like a girl finding her voice when she has sort of cultural expectations, and it's when you see that Run Rebel by Manjeet Man. And I've only just started it, but it's amazing, and it is all about like Soranji, her finding her voice and standing up for what she thinks is right, not what the adults around her expect of her.
Hey, that's wonderful. Oh, thank you so much, everyone, for those recommendations, and also for your thoughtful and insightful answers to all of the questions. So I've learned a lot here today. I didn't think I was going to. I don't know what I thought, but I really learned a lot. So thank you so much. And we're at the end. It's almost perfect. We're at the end of our time.
Okay, yes, thank you everyone. That was a most interesting discussion, and it's also lovely to have three of our former lab participants, Hannah and Vagmita and Laura, join us this year. It's always lovely to have students from previous editions back. And yes, the recommendations were also really interesting because I did work with one of the Indian publishers whose books came up quite a bit in your recommendations. So it's all really brilliant. And yes, thank you. And we will see you with yet another student dialogue for those watching this video later next month on women from the 19th century who advocated for, women's rights. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.